This happened when I was 23, and it's the reason I never go jogging at night anymore. At the time, I was living in a small town outside Portland, Oregon. It was one of those quiet suburban neighborhoods where nothing ever seemed to happen. Tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, and the kind of place where people left their porch lights on all night. I had a habit of going for late-night runs after work. My job at a warehouse usually ended around 10 p.m., and jogging helped me clear my head before going to sleep. That night felt normal at first. The air was cool and quiet. Most houses had their lights off, and the only sounds were crickets and the distant hum of cars from the highway. I had been running for maybe 15 minutes when I noticed headlights slowly turning onto the street behind me. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Cars passed through that area occasionally. But something about this one felt off. The car wasn't passing me, it was creeping along, slow, way slower than normal driving speed. I glanced over my shoulder. It was a dark SUV, maybe black or dark blue. I couldn't see the driver clearly because the headlights were so bright. I kept running. Eventually, I turned onto another street. The car turned too. That was the first moment I felt a little uneasy. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe the driver lived nearby. But then something weird happened. The SUV slowed down even more, until it was almost matching my running pace. My stomach tightened. I turned another corner. Again, the SUV followed. Now my heartbeat wasn't just from running. I could feel adrenaline starting to kick in. The road I was on had very few houses and barely any streetlights. Just long shadows and tall trees. That's when the SUV suddenly accelerated and drove past me. For a second, I felt relief, but that feeling disappeared almost immediately, because about 50 yards ahead of me, the car stopped, right in the middle of the road. The brake lights glowed red in the darkness. My brain instantly started racing through possibilities. Maybe they were lost. Maybe they were turning around. But the car didn't move. Then the driver door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall and wearing a dark hoodie. He didn't say anything. He just stood there in the road, watching me. The moment our eyes met, every instinct in my body screamed that something was wrong, really wrong. I slowed my run, trying to act normal, but inside I was panicking. The man started walking toward me, slowly. That's when I turned and ran the other direction. Full sprint. I didn't even care if I looked crazy. I heard the car door slam behind me, then the engine started again. I risked a glance back. The SUV had turned around and was driving toward me again. My legs felt like they were on fire. The nearest place with lights was a gas station about 2 blocks away. I pushed myself harder than I ever had before. The SUV pulled up beside me again. The window rolled down halfway. I heard a voice call out, "Hey, hold up a second." I didn't stop, not even for a second. I sprinted straight into the gas station parking lot where 2 other cars were parked near the pumps. As soon as the SUV saw the lights and people, it slowed down. Then it kept driving, no turning, no stopping, just disappearing down the road. I stood there for a minute, bent over, trying to catch my breath. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely unlock my phone. I ended up calling the police and reporting the car. They never found it. But what still bothers me is the way that man looked at me when he stepped out of the SUV. He didn't look lost. He didn't look confused. He looked like someone who thought he had just found an easy target. And the worst part is, if that gas station hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened. This happened when I was 19, and it's the reason I never go hiking in remote forests anymore. My friend Tyler and I had decided to go camping in Northern California during summer break. We found a small forest trail online that supposedly led to a beautiful hidden lake. The trailhead was pretty remote. When we arrived, there were only 2 other cars in the parking area. It was late afternoon when we started hiking. The forest was incredibly quiet, tall pine trees everywhere, thick shadows on the ground, and barely any sound except wind moving through the branches. About an hour into the hike, we noticed something strange. The other hikers we expected to see on the trail never appeared, and the 2 cars at the trailhead, we never saw their owners. But that wasn't the creepy part. The creepy part started around sunset. Tyler and I had set up our tent near the lake. We were sitting by a small fire when we heard something moving in the woods. At first it sounded like an animal, branches snapping, leaves crunching. but the movement kept circling us, slowly, almost carefully. Tyler grabbed his flashlight and shined it into the trees. Nothing, just darkness. We tried to ignore it, but then we heard footsteps, clear footsteps, human footsteps, walking through the trees and stopping, like someone was watching us. "Hello?" Tyler called out. No response. The forest went completely silent. Then suddenly, a flashlight beam flashed through the trees. For a split second, we saw a silhouette of someone standing between the trunks. Then the light turned off, and whoever it was disappeared. That's when fear really started setting in, because the trailhead was miles away, and we were completely alone out there. Or at least, we thought we were. About an hour later, while we were sitting quietly, something slammed into a tree near our campsite. A rock. Someone had thrown a rock. Hard. Tyler and I immediately jumped up. That's when we heard running footsteps moving through the forest. Fast, circling us again. At that point, we didn't even pack our gear. We grabbed our backpacks and ran down the trail. The entire time, we could hear branches snapping somewhere behind us, following us, keeping distance, but always there. We didn't stop running until we reached the parking lot. Both of the other cars were still there, empty, no one around. To this day, I still wonder if whoever was in those cars was the person in the woods, or if something even worse was waiting for them. Either way, it felt less like we were camping, and more like we had accidentally wandered into someone's hunting ground. This happened when I was 21, and it's the reason I always check outside my window before going to bed. I was renting a small house in Texas while attending college. It was in a quiet neighborhood just outside town. Most nights were peaceful. But one night, around 11 p.m., I noticed something strange outside my window. A pickup truck was parked across the street. Its headlights were off, but the engine was running. At first, I assumed it was someone visiting a neighbor. But after about 15 minutes, the truck hadn't moved, and none of my neighbors had come outside. I tried to ignore it, but every time I glanced out the window, the truck was still there, just idling. Eventually, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The truck wasn't parked randomly. It was facing directly toward my house, almost like the driver was watching it. I turned off my room light and looked outside again. That's when I saw movement inside the truck. Someone sitting in the driver's seat, completely still, just watching. Minutes passed. Then suddenly the driver door opened. A man stepped out. He walked slowly across the street, straight toward my house. My heart started pounding. He walked up to my front yard and just stood there, looking at the house. Then he walked up to the front door and tried the handle. I froze. Luckily, the door was locked. He stood there for a few seconds, then he knocked. Slow, 3 times. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. After about 10 seconds, he tried the handle again, then he stepped back and looked around the yard. That's when I quietly called 911 while I was whispering to the operator. The man walked back to his truck. He sat there for another minute, then drove away. Police came about 15 minutes later. They searched the area but never found the truck. But before they left, one of the officers said something that still gives me chills. He said, "Whoever that guy was, he wasn't knocking like a normal visitor." I asked what he meant. The officer said, "Most people knock because they expect someone to answer. That guy knocked like he was hoping nobody would."